Welcome to another episode of my Own Your Expertise interviews. I'm Emily Crookston, owner and decider of all things at the Pocket PhD. I'm the ghostwriter for Rebels, Renegades, and Mavericks, and I love helping experts get their big ideas out of their heads and into the hands of their fans. If you're watching us live, we'd love you to pop into the comments and say hi, let us know how you're doing, give us a little comment, shout out, that'd be great. And today, my guest is Sophy Dale. Sophy is the founder of Sophy Dale Coaching, and she loves to teach small business owners how to write web copy that makes their ideal clients say, I need to work with you. She's coming to us all the way from Scotland, which I think is fun. I think might be my first international interview, so I'm excited about that. Sophy, thank you for sitting down with me. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about who you work with and what you do?
Sure. So obviously you've given a little bit of an overview. Most of the small business owners I work with they're generally solopreneurs, coaches or consultants or designers or some kind of service-based business. And it's either just them or them in a small team. And I work with them largely on their copy and their messaging and sometimes a bit more broadly on their marketing overall.
Great. And I thought it was really interesting. I'm not sure I've met somebody who does coaching around copywriting. So you don't just get your clients, take their ideas, go and write their copy for their website and hand it over to them. You actually work with them to get the copy done. Is that right?
Exactly. And that's kind of how I've always worked with my one-to-one copywriting clients. And these days I've kind of streamlined that a bit more, and I'm working with people via an e-course where they still get lots of one-to-one feedback from me, but it's very much them learning how to do the work, because it's such a core skill when you're an entrepreneur. And particularly most of the people I work with are at the relatively early stages in their online business. And later on, they might bring in ghostwriters, copywriters, all kinds of people to do it for them. But at the beginning, you have to do it yourself. And even later on, you need to know what you're recruiting for. And you still may want to do little bits of copywriting, kind of just responsive, off the cuff stuff and so on. So I think it's a really, really core skill for everybody to learn who's in this kind of arena.
Yeah, I think that's right. I remember when I was trying to figure out my first website, and the copy was so hard, and it would have been so nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. I mean, I did have people, but I mean, somebody like you who's an expert in that especially could have been really helpful. And I think you're so right that copywriting in particular is not something you can simply hand off to somebody and, you're going to get back this amazing marketing, but it might not connect with who you are, and it might not feel like you. And, if your brand doesn't fit, especially in the service-based industry, I think if the brand doesn't feel authentically you, I think it's going to be harder to make it work. And you're so right also with social media that you have to be engaged, right? It's not something you can really just hand off and let somebody else handle for you, because you're the brand, right? In a really intimate way, if you're running that kind of business anyway. That's really important. Yes, I like that. Great. So let's get into some interview questions then. How would you describe your path to becoming an expert?
Well, as I think I said to you before we did the interview, I feel that I've had quite a winding path to get to where I am now, but I also know that that's true for most of my clients and most of my friends in the entrepreneurship space. I started out initially wanting to be a academic when I was at university. And before that, I wanted to do all kinds of things, but it was always to do with books and stories and that area. So I thought about journalism. I ended up in publishing rather than academia, and enjoyed working in publishing, and particularly enjoyed that kind of collaboration with writers from the editing end of publishing. And I guess that's the bit that I've kind of kept going with. Right. And when I had my daughter, who is now 10, but when she was a baby, I wanted to do something that I could do completely from home, that I could be completely in control of, and that the only bits I had to do, I could do within her nap times. And so that's when I set up an online business as an editor and book coach. So that was a field a bit more closely aligned with what you do.
Yeah.
And then gradually over time, I found that I was getting lots of inquiries, not for the book coaching side of what I was doing, but people asking me how had I created an online business in the first place, and how had I known what to do, and how did I do the marketing and all of that kind of thing. And so I ended up setting up a second business at that point, which is the one that we're talking about just now.
Yeah. I was in a virtual conference last week, and one of the takeaways, someone said, when you kind of know you're ready to up level your business or move to something different with your business, and you can kind of create this second business alongside of the current business until you're ready to sort of make the leap. Or maybe the first business is just a product of the bigger business, that kind of thing. So it seems like your story kind of bears that out and shows how that works. It's a really interesting winding path. But I also, similar, I was in academia like you and trying to find my way, but there's always, and I love this, there's always this like thread that you can pull through, right? And I think that's really interesting, because I think we can't see that when we're in the moment, when we're moving from job to job or from business to business. We're not always cognizant of that thread, but looking back, it's so cool to see, oh yeah, that's the spark, that's the thing that I really love. So it's cool that you found your way.
I think as well, when you're in the middle of it, it's a bit like what people say about you can't read the message on a bottle when you're inside the bottle. You need somebody on the outside to be that second pair of eyes. And I find, especially not so much for the copywriting, but more for the messaging work that I do with people, that being that person who can say from the outside, but actually it does all, there is a thread. Often that's easier to see from outside than it is from inside, unless you have that, hindsight, which gives us all 20/20 vision. But in the moment, it's another pair of eyes can be so helpful.
Yes, I like that analogy with the bottle. That's great. Yeah. So for you, I know you said it was your clients really who started asking you, well, how did you start this business? Was there anyone else in your life, or who you were talking to at that time, that pointed things out in a way that you had pictured?
To a certain extent, it was a couple of coaches that I had worked with in the past, and also not just clients, but kind of friends, colleagues in the entrepreneurial space would say, well, you work in the UK, but all your clients seem to be in the States. Like, how did that happen? That kind of thing.
I see.
And so I think it was kind of starting to see that the things that people ask you about repeatedly, those are often, great big waving flags saying, come over here. And I found that people were asking me a lot about how I had known what to write on my website, how I'd known how to kind of frame it. How did I get inside their head was a question that people asked a lot. And I started to see that actually, whereas if I thought of the skill set as being the editorial and book coaching skills, actually what people were valuing just as much, and sometimes more in certain circumstances, was the online business side of what I was doing.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. So pay attention to the things that people ask you about a lot, right? And that's a really good way to sort of figure out what's in demand, what people are interested in. Yeah, awesome. Tell us, what is your die in a ditch belief? So just for the audience, I like to ask this question. A die in a ditch belief is something you've thought about pretty long and hard. It's something you'd be willing to defend if you were pressed. It might be a little controversial, but it draws a line in the sand for you. So I really liked Sophie's answer to this question on the questionnaire. So what's your die in a ditch belief?
Well, as I said, I don't think it's the most controversial belief out there, but I really believe that people massively underuse the power of story in the way that they market their whole business. But obviously, I particularly work with people on their copy. And I think people get all hung up on kind of conversion copywriting and trying to kind of push people into taking actions and worrying a lot over little tweaks to their copy. And all of that is important. But actually, if you can tell somebody a great story and you can pull them in and they can see themselves in that story, you don't need to worry so much about all those other details. And we're all storytellers. We all already know how to do this, and we can all kind of understand. We have an innate understanding of what story is, and we can see it and feel it in our guts when it's put in front of us. And so I feel that there's there's a bit too much in the online marketing world about trying to kind of push people into taking action and create false scarcity and, you know, all of those other sleazy tactics. And I honestly believe you don't need them. You need to find the people who want what you've got, and then tell them the story of what it would be like if they were to work with you. And 9 times out of 10, that will do it. So.
Great. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think you're right that the controversial part is in what conversion marketing looks like and figuring out how to make the story part of it. So do you have any tips for taking your story and using it in your copy that way? Any quick tips you could give?
So I think one quick tip is a lot of people really underuse their about page on their website. And it's generally, you can have a look in the analytics of your own site, but for most people, it will be the second most visited page on the whole site. Other than, you know, if you're having massive promotion for a particular sales page or something. But, you know, in the general run of things, it's really highly visited. And we tend to get taught to write the about page all about our customer. Whereas I think the important thing to do is to write about it through the lens of knowing that your customer is going to be reading it, but not have it all be about them. And so I think it's important to hook them in at the beginning by making sure that they understand they're in the right place and you're talking about the stuff that's interesting to them. But then talk about you, because my clients are, as we discussed, they're service-based businesses. People are going to work with them really closely, often in quite kind of vulnerable and intimate ways. You know, if somebody is, it doesn't really matter what they are, if they're teaching you about your nutrition or they're your business coach or, you know, all kinds of different service-based businesses, you need to really trust that person that you're going to work with. You can't trust somebody who just keeps saying, oh, I'm reading your mind, I'm reading your mind, I'm reading your mind, and never tells you anything about themselves. You know, it's got to be two-way. You've got to give them something. And it doesn't have to be hugely vulnerable, like you don't have to wash all your dirty linen in public, and it doesn't have to be and shouldn't be a list of kind of, I have this qualification, I have that qualification, because mostly nobody cares. And to the extent that they do care, they'll take it for granted that you have the professional qualifications you should have to do what you're doing. But stories about why you're doing what you're doing, what's in it for you, what you care about, the moment that you realize that this was the thing that you did want to do, that's the kind of thing that people will engage with and be interested in and remember. And I think I had a client a few years ago who said, but the thing is, Sophie, you don't understand. My stories just aren't very interesting. And I was like, really? Because most people, you know, there's something in there somewhere. And we dug a little bit more. And it turned out that her parents, she was originally from Nigeria. And her parents brought her over to the US at the age of 16. They had stayed with her for 3 days and then gone. And it was up to her to make her own life in the US, get an education. She was the oldest of, I think, 5 kids. And so she needed to be, you know, like forging the way for everybody else. So huge pressure on her shoulders. And yet this was something she dismissed as like, I don't really have any stories about me, like really ordinary life. What was interesting about that was it's not just that's quite a cool story, but also she is a web designer and a tech support person. And she specializes in working with people who don't like tech. And so she has this life experience of going through this massive culture shock of being in a different hemisphere, a different continent, nothing making sense to her, none of the culture made sense to her. So she has huge empathy for her clients because of this experience. And she has huge persistence and drive. She just, you know, that was such a sink or swim year for her. She knew she had to keep going and just push through, and in the end she would figure it out. And that's something that she brings into her work. And so it's not, you can't just tell a random story and slap it on your website and that's that. You have to draw out what is it in that story that is relevant. But generally there is something relevant, you know?
Yeah, of course. I all of that makes so much sense to me. When I go to a new website, almost always the next page after I go to the home page is the about page, because I'm curious about the person. I want to learn more about why they started their business, why they're there. But I love that, you know, you can always find a way to tell a story in an interesting way. There's always something there, you know, everyone has a story to tell. People say that all the time too, right? And yeah, I think a lot of times it's so useful again to have that second perspective to say to someone like your client, no, that's interesting. That's because sometimes I think we don't see the connection between that story and our business, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very helpful to see, oh, well, that you telling me that makes me see how you're where you are. that's really.
And I think, we had been talking a lot because she was a Squarespace web designer. How could she stand out from the crowd?
Yeah,
because there's loads of Squarespace web designers, and it doesn't involve much coding and sort of technical ability. And this helped us to see how could we position her based on who she really is, not in some kind of fake, let's position you over here. But, based on who she really is and how she really does serve her clients, how can we express that in a way that makes sense to people and is memorable for them? And that's one of the things Stories is so great for, because, if you were looking at 2 or 3 web designers and you'd read her about page, you would remember it.
Right.
Because it's a striking story. And I think that's a really underused element of people's websites.
Yeah, such a good tip. Yeah, really important. Yeah, I like that. Very good. How have you learned to translate your expertise for others?
So as we were saying, I think I've always had a more kind of teachy way of going about copywriting than probably most other copywriters. And I think that just is because for me, you know how you tend to do for others what you would want for yourself. And I like to understand how things are working. I don't just want somebody to go off and do it for me. I like to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it and understand it. And so I kind of found that was so much how I was doing it, even when that wasn't what people were explicitly asking for or paying for, that it struck me that an e-course, so for those people who really do want to learn the nuts and bolts of it, would be a massively more efficient way of teaching them than me sitting down on Zoom with each individual person and teaching them that. So I guess that's one of those ways in which how I do what I do has evolved as I've understood better what my strengths are and what people are getting out of working with me that they wouldn't get from working with somebody else. And so now they can go through the e-course and learn the nuts and bolts stuff. And then as they write each page for their website, they can send it through to me and I give them lots of feedback, and then they do another version and they send it back to me and I give them more feedback. And so they're still getting, a polished final site, and they're still getting a professional pair of eyes on it, but they've made all of it from the ground up. And I think for the right person, that's really satisfying. For the wrong person, please just take it away and do it for me. But people who do that, so.
Oh, yes. I like that a way of doing an online course in combination with working one-on-one with you. That seems like a really productive way of getting something done. That's because often, you sign up for an online course. I do this all the time. I sign up for an online course. I think this will be great. And then I do a couple modules and then I forget for 3 weeks that I've signed up for this course. Right. And so to have that sort of more touch-based and more intimate kind of connection with a teacher online, I think could be very useful. I'm thinking about this for my own course as well. But that seems really good. I like the combination also of giving people the understanding of what they need to do, and then helping them in the real world sort of figure out how it applies. That's great, and it seems like it would be super useful for a long term, not just in the short term. So that's great. What's the name of the course?
It's called Write Your Site.
Write Your Site. Oh, I like it. Very good, very good. And when did you create it? How long has it been out there in the world?
This version of it is quite new. It's only been out in the world for a few weeks, but it's a kind of expansion of a course that I originally wrote maybe about 18 months ago, which was just on writing sales pages, because often that's the bit that people who feel perfectly confident and happy with their website overall still hate.
Yeah.
Right.
That's me. That would be me.
And I think particularly because I have this interest in writing copy that is still effective, but is not manipulative, it's not pushy, and it's not salesy. And often that is something that really holds people back from sales pages. They want it to work. They want people to buy it, but they don't want to be that kind of sleazy salesperson who's really kind of going, buy now, buy now, buy now.
Right. Yeah.
And so this course, the Write Your Site course, is a kind of expansion of what I had done in that course. And part of the reason for doing it was, for some reason, I've always had loads of clients who've been web designers. And so I know from working with web designers that the nightmare for them is that they schedule out all their design work for individual clients setting up their websites across, the next few months. And the clients don't want to pay for a copywriter. And then it gets to the day that they're supposed to hand in their copy so that they can actually start designing the site, and they haven't done the copy.
Yeah.
And so, they end up tearing the hair out. And obviously it just is out of the budget for especially a lot of brand new entrepreneurs who this is the first thing they're really spending money on, up-leveling their business, having a professional website, but also paying for a copywriter to write the whole thing for them is just too much often. And so it struck me that by having the course, I could bring the price down considerably from working one-on-one with people, that would be something that would fit the designer's needs as well as their end clients' needs. So it's a bit of a just seeing a gap kind of moment.
Right. Yeah, that's so smart, because I've heard that from web designers as well, that they end up writing the copy for their clients because it just won't come or whatever.
Exactly. And you cannot, you can wireframe a site without copy, but you can't actually produce a site and hand it back to the client until you have it works. You just can't.
No, that's true. Yeah. It's so funny because all of our individual businesses have these bottlenecks, I think. And it's so smart to be able to figure out where you can insert yourself and help with this bottleneck, because not only are you helping web designers, you're helping the client get a website that they enjoy and they like, and half the time with copy is they don't feel confident enough to actually do it. And so it's easy to procrastinate when you're there, especially when you're brand new and you're trying to figure everything out. So yeah, massively helpful and affordable, and such a smart idea. I love that so much. Great, Sophie. Oh my gosh, I've enjoyed chatting with you. I've learned a lot during this conversation. Please tell us where we can find out more about you online.
Sure. So my website is sophdale.com. Sophie, courtesy of my dad's unusual spelling, is spelled SOPHYDALE.com. And that's really the best place to find out more, or you can check me out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Perfect. I love that. I'll put those links into the comments, linking to the video and all of that. And we really hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and feel free to re-listen to the replay. There's lots of great tidbits in here. Thanks, Sophie. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Me too.